Thank you all. I'm going to read the names that are here in the chat. June Jordan, Audrey Lord, Marsha P. Johnson, Arthur Brooks, Audrey Brooks, Toni Morrison. Thank you all. So now we can get into the conversation. So I believe we're up to chapter 3. I could understand how it was hard not to finish the book.
Yeah, there's not much of the book left.
It was hard not to finish it. So I'm not mad if y'all finished it and want to talk about it still. Like, it's all good. I didn't finish it, but I caught up finally, because to be transparent, I had been behind the last 2 weeks. So I finally caught all the way up. So, so I'm not mad if folks finished it. It's all good. But yeah, where do y'all want to start?
For me, the hardness that she showed.
Okay. What happened, Linda?
For me, the hardness that she showed Kat in the earlier chapters, it turned up again with May Alice. And so you begin to see that this really is her MO. It's I believe Ron said it last week or a week before, you get one shot with her and that's it.
Yeah.
So for me, it was reinforcing that she is who she is from way back. If this wasn't something that she learned as an adult, this was just her MO.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I can see that. I think that dialogue between them, I think what the dialogue continues to be about what's in between the lines. I think this was brought up earlier, but I could really see like how it really is about everything is in between the lines. Like, it's what's not being said. And that is, it's incredible as a writer to like accomplish that, like it just, because at the end of the day, I feel like this book is trying to tell us, like, it's about what we say, it's about what we remember, what we say out loud, like what we document. But we're getting these messages through what's not being said.
Well, and it changes some of the dialogue also.
I must say. I don't know. That's how I feel. I need to get my book.
Some of the dialogue that I may have not interpreted the way I would normally, but like she refers to May Alice was my girlfriend. Now, in just a straight up read, you go, okay, so they were girlfriends. But now with all the stuff with Kat and Jess, well, were they girlfriends? Did in her mind, is that the perception? And maybe that's why she was so pissed off.
I do. Who's going to speak? Oh, I do think that young people have distorted ideas of friendship, and Ursa, definitely kind of gravitated towards her friend, maybe more than the friend did to Ursa. I don't know.
I thought maybe the girlfriend thing was like that old school, girlfriend. Because my grandmother, I would hear her say, oh, that was my best girlfriend, or whatever. So I just assumed that that's what it was. But at the same time, I don't think that we acknowledge as much. I mean, I think now it's like a science, and like people are able to talk about it a little bit more, how the relationships between women blur quite often. As far as like, not only is she my homegirl, but there's also this intimacy that can't really be explained. It's not romantic, but it's also not on a level of like, ugh. relationships like that. We're like, we are in no way, you know, romantic, but or maybe what is the word for it? Platonically romantic.
Mm-hmm.
Or something of that nature. But I really think there's a play on that, because like even when May Alice was going through her crisis of, you know, finding out she was pregnant, just hugging and crying and hugging on poor Ursa, you know, and how she wished that it had, you know, it had been her instead of Harold, and that way she wouldn't end up pregnant. But I don't really even think that it was like on a sexual level,
Right.
much more than it was like on a more intimate level, like, oh, you know, I feel much closer to you than I do this guy, and yet here I am sitting up pregnant.
Right. And women have those kind of relationships way more. It's way more likely for women or young girls, they were relatively young, to have those kind of relationships than boys.
I don't know, because I think that
I
bros
don't
over
know.
hoes thing, that
What's
bros over
that?
hoes, bros
Uh-huh.
over hoes.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something a little homoerotic about that. I don't know.
You could be right.
I would just say, like, for women, I think, and this is probably another societal projection, is that women are allowed to have those intimate relationships that blur the lines a little bit more than those who identify as men. Because, you know, like, you hear people talking about, oh, that bromance, you know, that's new. But like those relationships may have always happened, but like to have it overtly in society, like, yo, I have a bromance with somebody. I'm like, that's what's up. Right. Enjoy that bromance. Hug up on somebody real quick, you know, but there's still some trepidation to like outwardly share that. But I do agree. And I know that was one of the ways that when I did a workshop with Planned Parenthood, how they describe asexual relationships, you know, outside of that terminology. You know, there are times that you might change up some plans if your best friend is moving someplace else, you know, and who do you assign your godchildren to? It speaks to an intimacy that usually gets overlooked. And similar to what we had said for All About Love, that's the thing that I personally felt Bell Hooks did not honor in her book.
Right. I remember that.
Those like intimate friendships.
Yeah, I think that it was just interesting because of the whole like argument around the patriarchy that Hooks had, which I think is inherently patriarchal, and like the unlearning of patriarchy we have to do to like understand like the cis hetero patriarchy and like compulsory heterosexuality also like in the book. Like it feels like because of that, because to be like we need to be in relationship in a cis hetero way and that needs to be the one for you, and there can't, you know what I mean, like this sort of way that heterosexuality in terms of just like particularly obviously for women, but specifically Black women, and like this obsession of why there's single, you know, women, why is there single Black women, what are there like more you know, are all the bad men gone, like all like the Steve Harveys and all of the Oprahs that kind of be, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, we can go on and on in terms of this trope that has been dragged, but yeah, there's this complete overlook of intimate friendships and the value that they bring to healing, because I think that's what this is about. Like, it's like they're showing us like how Corregidora really has no time for anybody. Seems like it's like just cold, yeah.
So I don't know if I have anything interesting to add, because this is one of those half-formed thoughts, but there's something about when I was reading this, I felt like the end of her relationship with May Alice like was really sad. And now I'm like trying to go back. I'm like, there must have been a line that has to do with this question of like the deep intimacy that they have. But now I'm going back, I see, so I have this version
Oh,
So
yeah, that one too.
yeah, so I don't know what page number it is for other people, but it's very close to before she starts talking about her singing. So it's like a page before that. And it's, she says, you know, it's when she's talking about Mr. Melrose and everything that happened. And, you know, now he's in jail. And then she says, I don't think anything ever worked me up so much as that woman. And I hadn't really known her or paid that much attention to her, just seen her, because she was 20 some years old and a woman. I was only a kid, but somehow I kept tying her and May Alice together. I don't know why I did. And it was always May Alice laying up there in that alley. Like, she didn't just go, oh, you're my friend who's a little bit more, who has a sex life and I don't, and, you know, is a little bit more socially engaged, and I'm still younger, I'm a virgin, I'm, you know, don't want to get pregnant, whatever. It's like, I think you're a woman who just died. Like, I cut you so far out, like, which is interesting. Like, that's a little weird. And that's as far as that thought has gone.
Yeah, I thought to me, I kind of had a similar thing. I feel like maybe she thought May Alice threw her life away by having the baby or being pregnant.
Y'all didn't get a sense of any, like, I don't know. I feel like there was a line where May Alice was like, well, this guy did it and you didn't do it. Or am I confusing another part? Hold on.
Well, she did make a crack about, like, but I know you like to watch instead, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and like, but there's another part that's a little bit further behind where she, earlier, sorry, than what I had just read, where Ursa never tells May Alice about Harold and the boys coming and knocking on her door, and, you know, and this sort of implied sexual threat. And then, like, a couple paragraphs later, you know, they're all hanging out with the boys, and May Alice keeps Harold and the boys from hurting or doing Ursa, which is also really interesting. So she may have been lording it over her sometimes and making fun of her and whatever, but she also was protecting her. But weirdly, Ursa doesn't feel comfortable, like, even pointing any of this stuff out, which we could speculate about.
But why do y'all think something deeper was going on? Or not going on, but it's sort of somewhat implied in the writing. I just feel like they were good friends, and, you know, in that good friendship, there's jealousy often. And I felt that Ursa was just jealous of this boyfriend and baby, or quote unquote boyfriend.
Yeah. I don't think Ursa wanted a baby.
What's that?
I don't think Ursa wanted a baby.
Agreed.
Was what?
I don't think she wanted a baby. I'm trying to talk to you.
In fact, I was thinking.
No la escucho.
You're fading out. You're fading out, Anais.
I don't think Ursa was comfortable with her own sexuality. You know, I think I don't know if you could say she's asexual or pre-sexual or whatever. I don't think she was that comfortable. She didn't understand, you know, May Alice. But, you know, but yet she was fascinated, you know, by May Alice and Harold having sex, looking at them having sex.
There's a lot
but
of that, though.
I think that was more of a youthful curiosity than anything else. Like, I mean, how old is Ursa? Ursa's like really
15.
young.
Like, they're 15.
But,
like, tú sabes lo que tú quieras, 15. Like, or maybe not. Maybe you don't know what it is. I mean, but it is curiosity. It could be. I know what I was doing. I know that I didn't know what the hell I was doing at 15. First of all, I thought I knew, and nobody could tell me otherwise. But yeah. I mean, you know how that is when you're 15. Like, And if they're besties, it seems like they're besties, and she was, I don't know, but it seemed like maybe there was a little bit more. I don't know if that's this book's point. Like, what is, there feels like there's a lot of like, what is the question that we're getting from these relationships that Ursa is having with these women and how they end up? Like, what is the author trying to tell? Like, what is Gayl Jones trying to tell us? Like,
Yeah.
I wonder, because there's, I mean, Tasha, you in chapter 2?
Yeah, I'm in chapter 2. I was while y'all were talking about, you know, like what are the things that coming up for us in this book, like the scene where I don't know where it is, but where she's just talking about the waiting. You know, that was gut wrenching for me. Like I felt that. And she was just talking about like she desired her partner. I think this was when she was reflecting back on Mutt. And she was like, motherfucker, yo, like, do this thing. Like, what's going on? Like, give me what I want. And, you know, she's just, like, waiting for him to turn, waiting for the alarm to go off. And he just gets it. I was like, yo, it beats that sometimes. And then also, you know, and then also when she was giving herself to Tad, but still not, knowing that she still wasn't fully present. You know what I mean? And it was just like the concession was like, you already know what I can't do for you. So, you know, we're gonna be and so like her boosting him up, like, yeah, that's good, yeah, that's good. But then him acknowledging like I already know that something's off. It just reminded me of the conversations that partners don't have. Especially when I talk to my clients sometimes, like people are not being authentic. And that also stifles and hinders the intimacy that you're trying to build. So, and that's when that huge ass argument came up. And I was like, oh, child, it was like Days of Our Lives on BD. So it was just like, I knew that was coming. But it was just like, and it wasn't that they didn't care about each other. And that's the thing too. It's just like, for me, that was just a really good example of how two people can care for each other, love for each other, but the lack of communication around those hard things causes things to fester and for it to go sour.
Why do you think Mutt changed so much? He seemed like a cool dude, and that jealousy just like it seemed like it consumed him to the point of like, you know, affecting his mental health. I mean, he really went off like, you know, the edge there.
But I think a man who is that jealous is not secure in his own self.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, there's something that he's questioning in his own, you know, about his own self, you know, because if he felt secure, he would say, oh yeah, she's my woman. I mean, you know, so what? Let them look. I mean, you know, but I don't think he felt that secure. So then he kept putting it, you know, on, you know, these men, putting it on her, and it was him.
Can I just push back on that just a little bit? Thanks, Ron. I think that it's also this feeling that you might be, that you feel crazy. I feel from what I've read thus far, I don't think Ursa ever acknowledged that what he may have been sensing from the other men was true. So that makes you feel freaking crazy. Like, I'm telling you, these guys are fawning over you with the most inappropriate thoughts, you know what I'm saying? And they are doing all kind of things with their eyes, and you're just telling me, you singing, girl? No. I need us to have a real conversation. So like them not being grounded and like, okay, babe, you know, you might be right. There may be some other stuff going on, like that validation. I think he was craving for that too, and it just sent him off the deep end. And that's something that can happen on both parties. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're thinking about girls who are jealous, they be like, you didn't see that girl, like, damn near lick your chest? You didn't see that? You didn't see that? Okay, so I'm crazy. It's more of the, you think I'm crazy? I'm gonna show you. So it it just really can derail any type of sensibility when you feel like your partner does not validate you. So I don't think it's fair to diminish that component of the relationship that they were having, because she was just like, I'm just singing on the stage and that's it. And that really wasn't what was true.
But what could she have done?
Right, because there's a possibility that that did not happen. I mean, the thing with, you know, a lot of people who, I don't know, you know, I mean, we've all seen friendships and relationships where, like, you know, you can't even go to a restroom without someone like, where you going? What you doing? You know what I'm saying? And that doesn't have anything to do with the other person. That has to do with someone's insecurity. I mean, acknowledging if someone's attracted to you or not doesn't benefit one way or another, because I believe it's assumed that, like, we all look good to somebody. At the end of the day, I would think it's about the relationship and the trust that you have with the other person. If the trust isn't there, I mean, there's absolutely nothing that you can do right to appease that person who is jealous and is insecure within themselves. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like at the end of the day, he threw her down the stairs. Like, I really, like, I mean, I guess we got to see the background and stuff and what led up to it, but at the end of
Then
the day,
isn't there a question whether he threw her
no, I
down
know.
the stairs?
No. What happened?
No, I'm saying, isn't there a question whether he threw her down the stairs? I mean, the point may be very small, but, or whether they were arguing and she, you know, fell down the stairs. I mean, I don't know. I still don't know, you know, what that was, but that would make a big difference whether he went and just, you know, pushed her, or whether they were arguing and she just went and he didn't catch her or whatever.
I think they would have addressed that in the narrative by now, because almost the entire plot sort of twists on that incident.
Yeah.
You know, because what we're reading now in chapter 3 precedes, you know, the beginning of how the beginning of the book starts. Yeah. So they're setting it up, and you can kind of see, I mean, the way they set up what's his name, Mutt's personality. Yes. You can see it. You can see that happening. Yeah. Just, you know, his jealousy is so irrational. And you know, he's thinking that, I mean, what makes it even more irrational, and they don't really, you have to kind of assume this, is that he's going to the club every single night. That on its own, it's a lot. That act on its own says something is not right. Right. You know, if you have a partner and that partner is as a job is performing literally every night, and you're going there every night because you think somebody's going to talk to her, or vice versa, that speaks to, you know, some level of mental health that's not quote unquote right. So
So I want to bring Tadpole back into the conversation, because I don't think it was just Mutt who was treating her that way and who got crazy, jealous.
Oh, I agree, yeah.
Right, so I don't think it's like this man who gets crazy. I think it's this, I don't know, I guess it's as depicted here, it's like men and their relationship to women, and how, you know, how insecure they are in that, because it's the same dynamic, you know. The sexual stuff wasn't going good between Tadpole and Ursa either. And it was the same dynamic. And then he gets really caught up, you know, in that he's not getting, he says the same thing. Aren't I fucking you? Aren't I fucking you? You know, you're my pussy. You belong to me. I mean, the two guys could be getting together and like sharing, like, you know, crib notes, you know, about like, how do you handle Ursa? Because the language is so similar. All about her pussy belongs to them, you know, and even that whole scene when she was trying to get him to touch her clitoris, and then he kept saying, am I fucking you? Am I fucking you? Is this fucking you? You know, it's just really like very limited. You know, it's like men in this, I don't know, that generation, I don't know how to talk about it, but it's like a depiction of men being very limited in terms of you know, their sense of themselves and what they then call on to have a sense of themselves. And it's the possession of their woman.
I think the possession is really key, because the scene where they go dancing, and she's like, I just want to dance in a less publicly intimate manner. Please don't touch me there. And like, he insists, or he stands in front of her with his hand out and gets, what was it? It wasn't the hateful look. It was like the two looks that go back and forth.
Look, that evil in him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the embarrassed look.
Oh, yes.
The embarrassed look.
Oh, yeah, because that goes to the old joke, right? Men are worried that women will laugh at them, and women are worried that men will kill them.
Let's talk about it.
But it also makes me kind of question, like, how much of Ursa's story, because of course, you know, we're learning this from what do you call it, the first person standpoint. How much of it's actually true? Because, I mean, what are the chances of Mutt and Tadpole saying the exact same thing? Am I fucking you? Am I fucking you? You know, you got a hole, ain't you? I'm like, something about this don't add up anymore. Like, how are they both saying the exact same thing?
You know,
they in the little town. They in the little town together.
But
like 10 people.
No, Stephanie.
I also think men.
Was it like 20 people?
I also think men were more narrow back then in their expectations of women.
No, but there was a text. There was and I don't remember what page it was, but it's definitely a part in the book where she says that she learned the language of fucking you and found that she was bringing it into the conversation. So she was, I don't know who she read from, her great grandmama or something, because of the trauma that they had with the slaveholder. You know what I'm saying? So she was just like, I found myself bringing in that fucking you language. So I don't even think that they were introducing that. She was the one, because that came down the line. You understand what I'm saying? So you hear the fucking you and we just immediately like, oh, that's the man talking. But she was just the one that was, there is a line that says it. I remember that very vividly, but she's just like, I learned this language from my great-gram or something.
She might have learned it, but learning something and using it are two different things.
Listen here, if that's what you know.
It doesn't seem like she's using it. She may know it, because, you know, men tell you how they feel by their actions, but to use it is different.
Don't make me be inappropriate in this group. There's a lot of us. There's a lot of things that we done said in the heat of the passion that ain't so dainty and fragile-ish. You know what I'm saying?
So Tasha, this is how I remember it in the book. How I remember it in the book is that Mutt says to her, you never used to talk to me like this. You never used to use that language. And then she says, you taught me to use that language. Like Corregidora taught my great-grandma to talk like this. That part where she says that her grandma got taught. She says, my great-grandma got taught by Corregidora to talk like this, and you taught me to talk like this. That's how I remember that section.
So she knows the language, but I don't think she initiates that kind of talk in the sexual situations.
Interesting. I gotta go back to that because there was a part where he grabbed her. There's a part where he grabbed her breast, and I think she made the reference like someone had grabbed her really hard or something, and then he grabbed her breast, and he was like, "Well, how?" I felt like with Tad, he kept asking questions about like how he was towards her, and I don't feel the same. Mutt did the same thing. Like I feel like Mutt was just trying to get his nut off. You know what I'm saying? Do what he had to do. But Tad was more like, how does this feel? Does this feel good to you? Whatever. Stephanie's like, no. But she did with the boobies on the wedding night. He was just like, that is all right? What you talking about?
But you know, the thing about Tad is he enters the relationship after she has surgery, relatively major surgery. So he is more caring about their initial sexual encounters because of all of this history that Ursa brings into their relationship.
Mm-hmm. Didn't he like cheat on her with a 15-year-old?
What's that?
Tadpole.
What happened?
Yeah.
Anaís. Un escándalo. There was a novela that happened.
I said that was crazy last week, and nobody was like, nobody followed
I didn't get to that
on
part
it.
last week, right? I was like, okay.
I was like, that's crazy, and everybody was like, okay.
Nobody, that means nobody got to it. Now, if people got to it, we can say that it's crazy.
Tell us how you feel, Ron. Tell us how you feel.
Yeah, that's why I was like, nah, I don't think like Tapodica was like less or whatever. Like, nah, he had a whole 15-year-olds.
Yeah, that's the situation I saw. It felt like it was coming from a mile. Like I could see it coming, and it felt like, it felt almost beneath the rest of the book. That like, why is she 15, and why does he have to have an affair? And why is the affair with the woman who he's just hired to sing or the girl he's just hired to sing in the club? It just felt like they just threw like a softball to kind of just keep the story going, That's how I felt. And just to like inject Tadpole having sex with a 15-year-old, just to put that in there.
So when women have women issues, like, and I'm asking if anybody knows from like a personal standpoint, or maybe we read stories or looked at shows or something. What do the men do in those moments when like the woman is going through, a situation where she doesn't feel, she can have what I know we know idealistically, like, okay, he's supposed to sit there, he's supposed to wait. But I almost think like I would assume a man would probably cheat if they didn't have a conversation where she was like, okay, go on and do your thing, don't wait for me, I mean, maybe that happens, I guess. I don't know, but like I would just assume they would cheat.
But then you have to ask yourself, then what is marriage?
Well, here, all heterosexual relationships are some form of ownership. So in this story, it feels like, what else would he do? What else would where's the redeemable male character? Like one of the random what do you call it? General store owner in the small town. Like, is there one good one, Yeah. But that's the story, the world of this story in this time period.
Also,
but I don't think they had they didn't have a relationship, really. I mean, they had sex. That's it. They were fucking. That's it. But what about talking about something else? Or talking about, and I think Tasha, you had alluded to it, to develop the relationship around a bunch of stuff. I mean, I wouldn't want to have, a man that I'm just, sleeping with, and I didn't tell him about the flowers in the backyard, or this, what happened in my day, or listen to him, or whatever. I mean, it just seems so. And I think I forgot your name, Aisha, not Aisha. Anyway, she had said that last week too, that it just seems like a very narrow kind of thing where they didn't really have a good relationship. And then if I had a hysterectomy, first of all, I don't think I'd get married so soon to somebody else, but I mean, that's a severe surgery. That's severe surgery, and it's not just physical, but it's emotional. I mean, spiritual. And if my man did not understand that this was the case, and yet he said he loved me, then, I would question it, I mean, I know people got to get their stuff off, but not to go to a 15-year-old child. He was a pedophile, I mean, there was such a lack of understanding of Nobody understood anybody. Seems like in this book. Or they didn't try. They didn't have the relationship to try. You know.
They didn't have much time either. Like in this chapter, it reveals that her relationship with Mutt was like 4 months old when this started happening.
Yeah.
And her relationship with Tadpole was like 4 days old. You know, by the time he, you know, they're like, oh, I'm marrying this guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
yeah.
But there's not much basis there to struggle through stuff and come out together and work stuff through and.
Right. Yeah.
We have a lot of intergenerational trauma that everyone needs to go through, because it feels like the only thing anybody talks about that's deep is like, well, so my great grandfather, the slave owner, did this in my family, and this on my side, and that, but like we don't get hopes, dreams, wanting to leave Kentucky and head up to Baltimore, or like anything that might be different. It seems like it's all pain or literally trying to survive. Like when I think of Ursa, I think, well, maybe she had to marry her boss because where else was she gonna live? She wasn't gonna go back home. She's now a divorcing woman. And it doesn't seem like there's much space for her to like set up herself on her own.
I don't think that's true, actually. There were some dreams of going outside because Kat was like, I'm out this bitch. I'm gonna get my hair business. I'm gonna go to Detroit and I don't know about y'all, but I need to get up out of here. So there was this idea of leaving the town for their own aspiration. And also going back to the relationship between Kat and Ursa, Kat warned her. She was like, yo, you're moving. This man, Tad, liked you from day one. It is too soon for you to try to be with it. Matter of fact, just come to my house today. Okay, have him bring over your things. So there was definitely someone there to try to derail that trajectory early on. She came and she's like, you know, I didn't want to come see you because, you know, you've been through something. I didn't want you, what you call it, evil? Your evil feelings. I didn't want to deal with you with your evil feelings. I'm going to let that simmer down a little bit. But once she felt that, you know, she was in a better mental state, she was just like, yo, I don't know. She even said it to her. She's like, you're blind to what is directly in front of you. Let me create this space. I will open my home to you so that you can worry and work on yourself. You know what I mean? And then also when you talk about not seeing what's directly, but she also didn't really trust Kat either. So I don't know what that was when she said to her, like, why didn't you tell me about Jeffy? But she was like, I done told Jeffy to stay on the flow. Like, I could have told you, but why didn't you just take what I said as enough? You know what I mean? And then now you were impacted by your decision to go and do the opposite of what I said. So I just think those are two things that we can also bring into the conversation.
Yeah, I think Kat was trying to pitch woo. I mean, I think part of the conversation that Jeffy and Kat were having was that, because you remember she said, I don't know how far, Jeffy was like, Kat said, I would have told you she wasn't going to go for it. Like, I really think Kat was plotting on recruiting somebody on the team. So I think that there was an ulterior motive for her to go to Kat. So technically, you know, I don't think she really did have anywhere to go because, you know, Kat, and you could even see where, like, Kat was being kind of cruel or mean sometimes to Ursa as well, telling her to hush, go to the back of the room, you know, all of these different things. Like, that's not, she talked to Jeffy the same way. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that doesn't equal being respectful to your peer. That's like somebody under me or somebody that I can handle or somebody that I can mold in the way that I want.
Angel just said a question. Did Kat leave because of that or because she was fearful that Ursa would let slip about her and Jeffy? Would let slip about her and Jeffy? Thinking about Kat and Ursa's last combo on their wedding day. What did y'all think? Thank you for that question.
Hi, this is Laura. I'm sorry, I have to leave the meeting, but it's always a good discussion. So I hope to see you next week.
Yeah,
Take
thanks for
care.
coming, Laura.
Bye.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Kat
Mhm.
almost seems too strong to run because of maybe a rumor. You know, she seems like a really strong-willed person, and I don't even know how. Is it a secret that? I mean, they don't. No one else refers to her
Yeah.
sexuality, but is she trying to keep it a secret?
I would think so, because she asked Ursa, "You're not gonna say anything. You know how men get."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I almost felt like it was one of those benign things. What was that term they used to use? Don't ask, don't tell, or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the
Don't ask, don't tell.
services, don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
No sé, and there was you don't ask what you could see, something like, and there's something like that in Spanish, like
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
No se pregunta lo que se ve.
Mm.
You don't ask what you don't see. Juan Gabriel said that. The singer, famous singer Juan Gabriel said that. He's like, because he was very, very much queer, and everybody will always ask him, "Are you gay? Are you gay? Are you gay?" And he'd be like, "You don't ask what you could see." Like he'll just that would be his answer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I felt about it.
I don't know. I think probably a little bit of both.
I mean, she does have the young woman not living in there, but in there quite a bit. Jess is a Jeffy. So you know, the minute that something like that happens, people start gossiping.
I have a different, a slightly different take now as we've been talking about this, because in the first time around, we thought, well, is Kat like having a relationship with Jesse, like the 16-year-old?
Right.
And now I'm thinking, no, Kat's a lesbian. She's made that choice. She shared that with Ursa in that conversation, you know, when she said, I couldn't be humiliated,
Yeah.
you know, working for the white man and come home and be humiliated by man also. And then I'm thinking, Kat's like a 60-year-old woman, and maybe she was just helping Jesse come out. Maybe she saw that in Jesse, that she was a young, you know, girl who was a budding lesbian and a queer girl, and she was just supporting her, you know, affirming like, yeah, that's fine, you know, that's what you want with your life. That's okay here. So I mean, because when the first time we read it, I think all of us thought like, what? Is she like sleeping with a 60-year-old? But now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking more like, and because we're also talking about Kat as a very strong woman, you know, a very, very clear about herself and her life choices. And so I see her supporting young women around her who want to make that choice, you know, equally.
Did anybody also find that same scene kind of weird, that once Ursa invites Jeffy into the bed, that Jeffy would sexually molest Ursa? It almost felt like some kind of like male fantasy, the writer writing for the male gaze. That's how lesbians are. If you put one
I know. I was
in the group, they're gonna grab and feel all the other women, you know. And I just felt like that was weird. It felt a little forced. Again, it felt a little forced that that you would sneak a feel. Well, I mean, that happens all the time, but that you would sneak a feel and somehow get some kind of gratification out of it. I don't know.
I felt like I'm really intrigued with what Anais said, because I had interpreted it totally differently. And I think the way that many of us started with, of like, there's some weird abuse going on here. because often, and granted, I think Jeffy is a little bit old for this to happen, but with younger children, when they start acting sort of inappropriately, it's often because they've been abused themselves. And so for me, the fact that there was a sort of overheard cover-up conversation about that sort of reveals at least Jeffy and Kat are aware of each other's sexuality or sexual inclinations, made it seem like, oh, maybe Kat had been doing something inappropriate to Jeffy. Jeffy then misinterprets because she's young and it's the 40s, I don't know, that, oh, this woman is now, I've been told to sleep on the ground and this woman is bringing me into the bed, and sees it as a literal invitation. But because she's so young, I just interpreted the like the violation boundary being because her boundaries have been violated themselves. But I think I really like where we're going with this, because it feels like it is very ambiguous. And as someone else said before, we're getting this only from Ursa's point of view. And I would imagine Ursa's point of view is very much marked by the rampant sexual abuse. That's the reason why she literally exists, you know? So there maybe is a lot more openness and a lot more care or consideration amongst other characters, but it's hard to see through the perspective that Ursa has, and maybe my own projections in 2020, imagining what I would think women in the 40s would be thinking or believing.
Well, I also think it's not just Ursa's point of view, it's Gayl Jones's point of view. Because I think this book is expressing Gayl Jones's conflicts about sexuality. I think the homophobia, I really like what you said, Ron, about, you know, the way they depicted this, you know, the young, you know, Jeffy jumping in the bed and grabbing her as like, oh, all, you know, gay people, they want to do is, you know, they're all pedophiles. They just want to, you know, all after sex. I think that is homophobia. And I think, you know, particularly the article that Ron, you sent us, you know, from the New York Times with that interview, or it's not so much an interview, the article about, which you also talked about her husband, you know, having that altercation around the gay pride march and coming back with a shotgun, you know, and
so he clearly has issues.
And she is like this with her husband, and she was like this with her husband.
Very, very close.
For as long as they were together, like 20 years or so. So I just think a lot, for me, like the whole stuff, the conversation with Kat, even Ursa's personality and her experience of that rejection, her difficulty of being sexual with her husbands, and then her experience of the rejection, like, you know, of the men being in control of the sexual experience. And then the minute the men feel insecure, then they just cut it off. And then she's left wanting. And then they're in control. That whole thing, I think that's Gayl Jones. That's not just this character, Ursa. I think that's Gayl Jones expressing her experience as a woman around her own sexuality. And we always say, don't we, if you protest too much, it means because you want it. You know, I mean, the greatest homophobes are the ones who have sexual feelings for people, you know, of their own, you know, sex. So that's what I'm thinking.
I was thinking about what you said about like the homosexuality and like how probably I almost think maybe she dabbled a little bit talking about Gayl Jones, because remember the part where May Alice said, my hole is bigger than yours. Oh, you want to see? Let me see your hole and I'll see your hole. And I'm just like, where does that come in at? And even this was before the baby and all of that stuff. So like, if someone had said that to me who was my good girlfriend, hint, hint, how in the world could we not have this conversation again about like, girl, you know, earlier when you asked me about seeing my stuff, like, what was that about?
But we got to remember they're young. They're very young, to me anyway.
Well, they're young, but they're not playing doctor. Like, they're 14 or something. They're 14 and 16 around this time period. And so, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that was hella weird.
Yes, and even like I'm still stuck on Kat talking about giving this girl her fist to not punch her in the face, not sock her in the stomach, to do something else. Yeah. Like, I mean, I just can't imagine a 60-year-old woman who is revered by everyone, who understands that this young lady is a homosexual, and that she's out here in the world. And mind you, they're in the same bed now. We know that Kat didn't like anyone laying on her couch, but there were still other places that she could have slept. Why are y'all in there whispering that early in the morning, and this lady is offering her fist to this child? It's still weird.
Yeah. And then Ursa repeated that same thing to somebody else.
You know, there's one, and this is almost like a side thought, or not a thought, but something I read in the book that seems so weird to me. They meant I guess it's page 158, and I think Ursa is in the club, and Mutt is on one of his jealous tirades or something, and they mention somebody wearing a Shaft coat. And I thought that as opposed to a Dick Tracy coat. Now this book comes out before the movie Shaft. Like, was that a name of a coat before the movie? It felt
when did the movie come out? Because she wrote the book.
73.
She wrote the book in 75. I mean, it was published in 75, so she was writing it.
Right, but it takes place in the 40s.
Right.
So I just noticed that, and maybe there were coats that were called Shaft coats back then, but I was like, that's very weird. I think she mentions it twice. So I don't know. That's the only note I made in the whole book.
So that's like the equivalent of like having the Starbucks cup in what is it, Game of Thrones?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, one thing I'm thinking, Ron, is that I didn't read chapter 4, but it opens up with, it was June 1969. I was 47. Yeah. So she's telling this story from somebody who's already older, already in 69, the 70s, and she's going back and telling this whole story. The narrator would have known about Shaft. So it's because the narrator would have been in the 70s.
Okay. And that was I didn't read. I don't want to give too much away because I didn't read too much into chapter 4. She's still working in the same club for 20 years. I was like, yo, you gotta, look for a new job or something. That seems like a long time to be singing in the same club. I don't know anything about, having a gig at a club. I know they have their regulars and things like that. Some clubs have regular performers, but you would think after 20 years, she would be up there with, I don't know, Ella Fitzgerald or something like that. Maybe she was.
A small town though, like, I just really get a sense that everything is super tiny.
Yeah,
you don't have options.
Definitely.
You move in with your boss, your friend across the street don't do that, so you move in with her. Like, it just feels like, I don't know.
I guess.
And that thing that she's been through, I also got this, it didn't really surprise me because I felt like she finally settled in someplace. She had gotten that club owner, she had set him straight, she knew the crowd there. this was a place where she could exhale, and so she just stayed.
Yeah.
Mm.
Which does seem like in line with how Ursa is depicted throughout the book. She does feel like she likes narrow options.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's not, thinking so broadly about her life and her career opportunities. She's kind of taking things as they come to her, and she is perfectly happy to live within those boundaries.
Yeah, like the biggest move she made was to leave her mother and grandmother's house.
Yeah.
That was a big move because all of her generations, the mother, the grandmother, the great mother, they all lived in the same house.
Yeah.
It's like their lives were really small and narrow.
Yeah.
They didn't venture out. And then that was a big move for her to take off and go to the city that she wound up in, and to start singing. She wanted to sing. That's why she left, because her mother wouldn't let her sing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like that was bold, and then that was as bold as she was going to get. She wasn't reared to be bold. She wasn't, she didn't live in that kind of experience.
Yeah.
And also, it makes me wonder, I feel like so many stories that I read about Black women during this time period, or just Black people in this time period, there's some sort of great migration story. There's some sort of, I gotta leave my very troubled circumstances, or or there's better opportunity somewhere. And it is kind of intriguing to read a story about someone who just doesn't, who just wants something slightly larger than what she has, but I wonder how much too all of the incest plays a part in that, in the sense of, it's not like I got an uncle up in Detroit and so maybe I can go sing in a club in Detroit, right? I'm just gonna go, a bus drive away. Like there doesn't seem to be family or anybody else.
That is true. Yeah.
Particularly as a woman, right? If she was a man, I would imagine sort of, well then fine, I'll just go get a factory job somewhere. Or I wanna be an artist, so I'll go and I'll figure out some way to do it. I'll, get some day job and I'll sing at night or perform or whatever. And for her, it seems like I'll just go to the next town over and get a job at the nearest club. And that's what'll work for me, because that's probably more realistic for her circumstances.
She didn't even have a sibling to travel, very often sisters would travel north together or brothers would go up together, but she didn't even have that.
Or aunts or cousins.
Yeah.
Like each generation, there was the grandmother, and then there was the great-grandmother, and then the grandmother. Just like this, just one line of women. It wasn't like there are brothers and sisters at any level of generation that creates like an extended family, that people then go and stay with when you migrate, Yeah. Like I mentioned, my mother came from Puerto Rico in the mid-40s, and she came with 7 sisters and brothers, and that's how they did it. They wouldn't have done it on their own, either any of them on their own. And the Great Migration, people were going to cities where their family had already gone, their cousin or their brother or their uncle, their aunt. So it's really amazing when we think about this story is really of this single line of women, and what kind of, how does that, their relationship to the world, what does that do to their capacity to live a life, to build a life, to interact, even emotionally, to build relationships, when their life experience is so narrow.
Which I'm sure affects their relation. I'm an only child, and I don't think because you're an only child you'll be like more shy or less. I don't know how that works, but she definitely has like a narrow existence. you know, from birth. And her parents were strict also. It wasn't like her parents were, go out in the world and, you know, start your life. So everything was like really kind of tight and bound. It almost feels like an extension of the way Corregidora treated her great grandmother and grandmother, you know, where they were just like these kept women just for him and just for his pleasure and financial benefit, you know, and even within that, they were like this kind of narrow parameters of, you know, who he would allow to sleep with the women.
It is interesting that she becomes a singer, right? A performer, right. Someone that is looked at. Yeah. You know, she doesn't become a seamstress.
Yeah.
She doesn't become a school teacher. She's not a domestic, right? Mm-hmm. Like she's put on a different pedestal and at least gets to use her talent and her agency and figure out what songs she should sing and what works best. But like, it's still, she's an object to be admired and looked at, you know, and heard obviously, but she entertains.
And I was also somewhat shocked that I believe she was a virgin when she married Mutt or got together with Mutt. And for some reason, her personality, and I'm just like stereotyping it based on what I see in, you know, old movies, like the tough blues singer, you know, goes through men, you know, like a knife through butter. She's almost like a prude, you know, as far as relationships and sex is concerned. She is not this worldly person, not worldly as far as travel, but also not worldly as far as intimate experiences. And I don't know why I would think different, but again, just being influenced by other books and, you know, movies and things.
Well, it feels like part of May Alice's purpose in this story is to kind of show that point, right? And like, whether it's the example of like, here's what you don't do, right? Don't pursue your own sexual pleasure. You're going to get pregnant, and then either your life circumstances are limited, or given the way that I was raised, I don't even want to be near you now, because she dumps her when she has the baby and refuses to see her.
I want to offer, I've been thinking about that, about Ursa's character throughout the book so far, where she cuts people off, where she never has anything to say. You know, people talk to her, she just stands there, doesn't say anything. And kind of off of what we've been saying about that shuttered life, that really narrow space. And I'm thinking she's really underdeveloped, like underdeveloped emotionally. Like things are, like those moments, I'm not sure how much judgment really there was in those moments, and how much of it was just not knowing what to say or how to respond. Like when the men say this to her, she doesn't say a word. Like, you know, when she, you know, like when she goes to the hospital, when May Alice has the baby, and May Alice says, oh, well, you can come back tomorrow to see the baby if you didn't get to see. And she says, well, I knew I wasn't coming back. Like she forced herself to go. But I don't know, you know, we don't really know, but I'm just saying, I feel like, I'm not so sure that it was because she was feeling judgmental of her, but more like she didn't really know what to do with that. She didn't know how to be in that space with her. She didn't know how to be in that space with the baby. You know, there's something really in that article that you gave us, to the link you gave us, Ron, there's a few times, it's really interesting, where they're describing Gayl Jones as an adult when she goes to school. You know, she gets to go to college. She gets a scholarship to go to college. And then they say that she was so painfully shy to the point of muteness.
Yeah.
And she's so, you know, Ursa is so mute in the book. So many points in the book, she's so mute. Like, she just goes mute. People are talking to her, and they're talking to her again, and then they ask another question, and she just stands there, and she doesn't say anything.
Well, she gives very short answers.
And then another thing, it says,
short answer.
While the faculty and students were in awe of her talent, many were struck by her silence. That's from the article. So you know, I think Ursa is so Gayl Jones. I mean, it's such a manifestation of her own story.
Yeah, again, I'm pretty sure Gayl Jones she hasn't been public in a really long time, but she probably had mental health issues that she was dealing with her whole life. And I would just assume that based on the man that she married, because it seems like they were really tight, you know, together. And you can definitely enter into relationships with people who have mental health issues, but he's not even trying to get help about it. He's acting out, you know, against queer people, against the police. There was an incident with his mother-in-law in the hospital where I think he tried to have her taken out of the hospital or have her sign over her power of attorney while she was in the hospital. There's a lot of crazy, you know, just like unusual things that I see them being together doing. You know, it's not like the husband is doing everything and Gayl is just trying to, you know, accepting it. I think she's an active participant in all of these incidents, probably the gay march incident also. Again, I'm just kind of basing it on how people live when they live together and when they're close. Like, usually one partner doesn't do things that you don't agree with. So it happens, but you know. I would love for her to do some kind of interview, you know, after all of this time, because I think she's 70. She's still relatively young, you know, it's not like she's like, you know, 99 or anything like that. So it would be great if she did some kind of public appearance or interview or something like that.
There's a great line on 147 in the blue cover. It's after a break, and it starts with, May Alice had said that after you had a baby, you felt like telling people. After I had Mutt, I felt like telling people, but at the same time, it was something that you didn't tell, something that you kept inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a theme throughout. It's like, what are they keeping inside? My mother's secret memory, my secret memory.
Which is interesting because it's secret happiness.
Secret happiness.
But secret trauma, you know, we'll talk all about that. Keep that evidence, make that public, make sure everyone knows, make sure everyone remembers. But I'm happy because I found my husband. No, I'm going to keep that inside.